Another key term in the fourth title is the notion of justification. And possibly this is where it is very interesting from a TOK perspective, because it's when we are dealing with the question of how do we know something. And how do we know something is the act of justification. So that's where you're going to be looking at reason and language, and that probably, I would say, is the entire TOK project, that we want students to understand the importance of justifying using strong reasoning and clear language. So what is involved when analogy is used in justification of logic? So you could do some research in studies in logic. Aristotle defines it in terms of empirical support and a Western academic notion of claim, explanation, or evidence, which needs to be empirically discoverable and as objective as possible. So that's justification. What happens when we put analogy into that mix? How is a scientist really going to react? Well, isn't a scientist going to say that analogy is more for artists, dreamers? So flights of fancy, or even more straightforward comparisons, might provide useful avenues by which to explore and test for such evidence. But more often, and it is preferred in the natural sciences at least, that we have understanding to be gained from rigorous analysis of facts and direct evidence, not evidence that's been conjured by human imagination. That's a lesser preferred mode of justifying a particular claim or understanding. Why not? Well, from an empirical viewpoint, imagination is fallible. It's constrained by the limits of human perception and our experience, as well as our beliefs, based on which are, pretty much all based on fallacies. Analogy is very prone to fallacy, so you can find some very good examples, I'm sure, to support this. I would just do a bit of research and have a look. Okay. Then you've got the last part of the question, which is saying to what extent do you agree? So I got a little bit cheeky and thought, well, I'm not sure why the TOK prescribed titles are still using this to what extent formulation, because a couple of years ago in the subject reports, one of the findings was that to what extent is not great, and that it's being, well, it's good for what it can be used for, but students are overusing it. Anyway, maybe it's appropriate here that the TOK examining committee assessment task writers chose it, so it must be okay. Maybe it is an opportunity for students to demonstrate the limits of this question for this purpose. Perhaps you could also follow my cheekiness, which I wouldn't recommend, and see, and show that the title is not, it's not a to what extent. Maybe it's more along the lines of under what circumstances or when should analogy be used. When should it not be used? Not how much should it be used. Because how much already presupposes that you're using it. Okay? Whereas if you delimit under specific circumstances, then it gives you a bit more flexibility with the title, I think. Anyway, how much do I agree with this statement is the basic English. Perhaps a line of argument might assume that the extent of my agreement is very low, and it is the extent of my disagreement which will be a more interesting line of inquiry, or vice versa, as per the title. Right? So you might just say, look, I completely disagree with this statement, and these are the reasons why I completely disagree. Okay? So it's not, to what extent do you agree? No, because to what extent is I don't agree at all. Thank you very much. Now I've still got another 1,500 words to go, and I've got nothing else to say. So better is to say, okay, well, I don't agree at all, and that's the essay I'm going to write, not the essay of agreement, but the one of disagreement. Okay, that's just being cheeky, though. not advisable. Why do I disagree? What is it about my line of inquiry that warrants me to disagree? The IB diploma program and the MYP could also be included in this point. I'm not sure why I wrote that. Maybe you will figure it out. All right, thank you very much. That's Title 4. Good luck.